ready?
Got open man. DJ Moore. End zone. Touchdown. Touchdown Bears.
I am Jeff Joniak.
Blitz is on. Down he goes. Oscar.
What was it like playing for Coach Ditka?
I don't want to answer any questions like that.
Pressure coming. He's in big trouble. Down he goes. Montez Sweat.
And etc.
Now, Bears Etc. brought to you by Geico, with the voices of the Bears, Jeff Joniak and Tom Thayer.
As we inch closer to Week 16 and a rematch with the Detroit Lions, we break it down here on Bears Etc. episode 121 of the Bears Etc. podcast. We're brought to you by Geico with Tom Thayer, the Super Bowl winning Bears guard. I'm Jeff Joniak. Coming up on the show, Lomas Brown, the outstanding left tackle in Lions history, one of them, will join us. He is the radio analyst and a good friend of ours, also a Hall of Fame semifinalist this year. And we'll discuss how the Lions look with all their injuries. Tom, as you look at the tape, and we'll get into the Bears in a minute, but when you look at the tape, the thing that sticks out to me, they got a lot of new defensive players, and their defense has regressed some, but it's still a dangerous team when you got an offense that could put up so many points at any given time.
Well, they have new pieces in place, but it's still the same game. And it's a defense that's led by Aaron Glenn and how he evaluates coverage against his opponents and how he wants to see the rush up front. What type of atmosphere is he playing in? Who does that give the advantage to? There's a lot that goes into it. It's almost like the Bears' first game against the Detroit Lions. It's a tale of two halves. One that was a slow starter and one that was super aggressive. So the Bears somehow have to figure out a way to take that aggressiveness that they learned of in the second half and use it in the entirety of this game that's going to be played at Soldier Field. And to me, I'm not going to have a woes me approach to this game. I'm going to take the approach to this game that we should beat the Detroit Lions. This is our home. This is our atmosphere. The conditions are in our favor. So now let's go out there and have a positive attitude that starts in the locker room and bring it to the field.
Yeah, the thing in your favor is this is only their second outdoor game. Now, it may not bother them. They did do a nice job up in Green Bay, but as a former player who, when he went to indoor games, there weren't many, I'm sure, in your career, but did it make a difference for a visiting team to play indoors versus outdoors?
It did, especially if you had a super supportive crowd, because when that time, at that era, that when we played in Minnesota, the crowd was still on behalf of the Minnesota Vikings. It wasn't like StubHub and everything was in existence back then where you could sell your tickets to the opponents of the fans. When we went to play in Detroit, when the Bears had the upper hand, it was more of a Bears supportive crowd than it was a crowd on the behalf of the Detroit Lions. So, it's a different atmosphere depending upon where you played, and the majority of the stadiums, as you mentioned, when I played, were outdoors, and you could come across that crowd noise always in Green Bay and stuff that was always difficult to play in. But, I want the Bears players to come out of the locker room and earn the respect of the Bears fans, so they show their appreciation by the cheering and the noise that could really benefit the Bears, especially on defense.
Play loose, play with reckless abandon, play with fire.
Play hard, play aggressive, play with your head up, and play with meaning. And just like all the adjectives that we just used to describe what we want to see out of the Bears, that's exactly how I feel about it noon Sunday. And I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say I think the Bears can win this game. I think they will win the game.
As you're grinning. We'll get to your why. We'll get to your why in a second. Okay. Tastes like Miller time. Go to MillerLite.com/BearsPod to find delivery options near you. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. What is your why?
Because I talk about a lot of the different pieces in place for the Detroit Lions, even though they're going to play the same style of game. But now you have to see if these guys they're going to have a lot more reps put upon them. Are they, first of all, they in condition? Do they have the desire and the fight in them to play 60 snaps instead of 25 snaps? Do they have the production out of the positions that is so important to their offense? For example, they run a lot of play action passing. Are you going to get the same deception out of whomever's playing behind Jamar Gibbs that you would out of Gibbs and Montgomery? when you look at the defensive line, they've already lost Hutchinson. Now they lost McNeil, who was one of their best defensive players. Now, is that player that's going to be put in that place? Is he up to the physical demands of the game, especially in an outdoor cold atmosphere? And again, I think the Bears, if they can come forth and put together the effort out of the defensive line that supports the back end of the defense, be better athletes at the defensive line than Jared Goff is dropping back as a quarterback on a natural surface.
Our Geico gives you more football stat of the week. 22 is the number. That's the stat. 22 players on injured reserve for the Detroit Lions. Few are even close in that ballpark. As a comparison, the Bears have 9. So it's a massive amount. Let me throw some names on defense. Alex Anzalone, Jalen Reeves-Maben, outstanding special teams player. Derek Barnes, linebacker. John Kaminsky in the rotation up front. Marcus Davenport, edge rusher. Aiden Hutchinson, of course. Ennis Rakestraw Jr., the rookie corner. Ifeatu Melifonu, he's getting his way back the window to return at safety, but he's not back yet. Carlton Davis, the starting corner. Their starting return man, nickel corner, Khalil Dorsey. He gets some action. Aleem McNeil, as you mentioned. Mekhi Wingo also up front. Wow, I have not seen a defense this decimated in a long time.
You know, Jeff, if you take that group of guys and you put them on the field as a starting defense, you have one of the better defenses in all the league.
Right.
So now you take them off of the Detroit Lions, and now they have to start investing abilities in their backups. And so I want to see the Bears come out there with a confident Lomas Brown calling the plays for Caleb Williams. Caleb taking the offensive assets he has at his disposal and use them repeatedly, efficiently, and effectively and get into the end zone.
Well, the first thing is they still play hard, and they are thinking championship. They are not thinking about anything other than trying to get to the Super Bowl as they got close a year ago. Right now, they are the number 1 scoring defense in the second quarter, allowing just 60 points, so they're still doing well there. 10 play drives. They've given up the fewest points in the NFL, 56. Fewest touchdowns, 5. There's plenty good on third down. They're 4th in the NFL in third down yards allowed. So, you gotta win situational football. All things that are necessary to try and complete this thing, get a win.
Yeah, a lot of those analytics, a lot of those stats, a lot of those numbers are associated to the first 3 quarters of the season when the only in-climate game that they played in was up in Lambeau. And I know they came out and they won the game, and the preach point after the game was Dan Campbell, anytime, anywhere, any conditions. And so now when you look at the amount of guys that you have on injured reserve, and where Caleb can go with this offense and the weapons he has, I think it's time for the Bears to break out and have one of those games that we've been expecting out of them all season long.
All right, let's discuss further, including the loss of David Montgomery from a Lions perspective. Here's our good friend. Let's go to left tackle, the veteran and radio analyst for the Detroit Lions radio network. Let's listen in to Lomas Brown. He was a legendary figure in the NFL with the Detroit Lions at left tackle, the one and only Lomas Brown. And Tom Thayer and I enjoy the conversations. He's beaming, Tom. That's what happens when you win 12 games.
It is. It really is. And I mean, it's been unbelievable for us, the city, just everything, man, this winning streak. Unfortunately, it ended with Buffalo. But to be sitting here at 12-2 with 3 games left in the season with a chance at the number 1 seed, you couldn't ask for anything more other than us being healthy. But, you just roll with the punches.
Wait, Lomas, I got a question kind of on that accord. Does Detroit know how to win? And I don't mean just winning regular season games, because now it's coming down to crunch time, and then the ultimate is the playoffs. Do the Detroit Lions know how to win?
That's a great question, Tom. Great question. I would say yeah. If you talked to me last year, I think the experience we got last year, I really think it's going to help this year and help push us through this year. Getting to the NFC Championship game, I think the way we lost that game to being up is by 17 points in the first half and then losing a game like that. I think we learned a lot from that game. The number one thing we learned was that we got to have home field advantage. Everything needs to run through Detroit. So that meant getting the number one seed. So, yes, I think if we get this number one seed and the games are here in Detroit, or regardless on the road, I think this team has learned how to win those tight games and to finish opponents. That was our biggest thing, finishing opponents last year.
Kind of a weird similarity. In 1984, the Bears get beat in the NFC Championship game out in San Francisco. They have a big talk on the flight home. They realize the importance of winning to get the home field advantage, and then 85 took care of itself. So, back in our memory banks, because they go back so long in the NFL, I think about Detroit as it pertains to learning how to win. And it seems like, you got guys like Jared Goff and Campbell. They're no bigger personality than Campbell. They have some great leadership on this team.
Yeah. And I think what gets lost in the midst too, Tom, is the assistant coaches. I mean, think about it. We got all the ex-pro players that we have as assistant coaches. When you talk about Randall L., you talk about Hank Fraley, Calvin Shepard, Scotty Montgomery, Dan Campbell himself. And I know I'm forgetting a couple.
Aaron Glenn.
Aaron Glenn, yeah. I mean, it's just unbelievable when you got those type of guys that you could come off the field if you're having a tough time and be able to talk to those guys who've been there, done that.
Was that intentional by Dan when he put the staff together?
I think so.
Yeah.
I really think so. I really, really think so. And now I'm starting to see that, that's the first thing I do when I get an opponent's sheet. I look to see who's on the coaching staff, how many ex-players do they have on their coaching staff, because I know the value in that. I know what these guys could bring to the table. And, yes, I do think Dan Campbell did that, surrounding himself with good assistant coaches that used to play in this league.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great exercise to do. I occasionally do it. I don't do it every time, but I think players who respect the past and a guy who knows how to coach, because you can be an ex-player and not know how to coach and just tell them what you think, but to teach them is the key, right?
Yes.
Who was your offensive line coach most of your career?
So Bill Muir brought me into the league. He drafted me in 1985, and my last coach was Bill Muir. So he was on the front end of my career, and he made sure he got me on the tail end in Tampa Bay when I was able to win the Super Bowl. So he was the guy for me. And, of course, I had some great guys in between, George Warhawk, Karl Malk.
Ooh.
I had some great guys in between there, too.
Karl Malk. Now, that was an angry man.
That's a piece of work. That man used to tell us, Tom, it was so funny when a guy in the room, and say you're a borderline guy that maybe couldn't cut, he was standing there and he would be like, son, you're one step from becoming a petroleum engineer. Do you know what that is? That's a gas station attendant. We used to be in there like, oh my goodness, man. He was something else.
He's the John Tierlink of offensive line coaches, where he's going to tell you like it is, and he's either going to inspire you or open the door for you. Hey, Loma,
wait. First in that offensive line, Tom. Tom's offensive line coach was, don't you?
What?
Well, no. So last week in the locker room, when Dan Campbell was bent over talking to Skipper about throwing up, if you look right above his head, it's the name of Dick Stanfeld. One of the greatest offensive linemen in the history of the Detroit Lions was my offensive line coach from start to finish.
Wow.
And one of the most incredible coaches that could coach every single position, every single step against every single defense, from the time you got in your stance to the time you made your collision or your required assignment on the play.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, yeah, I know the name. I respect the name because like you say, he's one of the all-time greats.
So, Lomas, looking at the injury report yesterday, you guys had 9 guys DNP, did not practice, but some of them are resting. 4 of them were offensive linemen. Is this team mature enough to get through the course of a week without having to go through their paces and practice to come out with the confidence on Sunday? or is this a team that Dan Campbell has instilled a certain sense of maturity in them that they can do that?
I think they have the maturity in them. If you think about it, Tom, we went through a tough stretch when we had 4 games in 18 days. I mean, again, and that was tough. A lot of those games in between, there was no practice in between those games because you couldn't have any contact, So your body's still trying to recover. And those were successful games. Like I say, other than the Buffalo game, we lost on the tail end of it. And I do think the guys were kind of tired. I really do. They came out in that Buffalo game, the last game, lethargic, like we were playing in the sand. And you never use that as an excuse. But like I say, 4 games in 18 days, that's a lot to put your body through. So I think that has something to do with it, but I do think it has the team ready, and they know how to practice without having contact. They know how to practice without having to practice, if I can dare say that. Yeah. So, I think there's a lot of things that they've learned going through that stretch of games that they can use to help throughout the rest of the season.
Lomas, David Montgomery, how big is this beyond the obvious, and what has he meant inside that locker room, and that grit that you guys have owned as the kind of the rally cry in Detroit this year because of how you guys played? Does he exemplify that in every way?
I'm telling you, I love David. Love me some David Montgomery. And like I said before the season started, he was my MVP for this team. And he was the straw that made that drink mix, mixed that drink. He was our cog, man. And it's going to be tough now knowing that he's out. Now, the great thing about him, like I said a little earlier, was that this man here has gotten 1, 2 opinions on his knee and still going out to get a third opinion. Won't let them put him down on IR. Man, that says so much about his character and where he's at and what the love he has for this team and how he wants to be out there. He's still trying to find a way to play. That's why I say I love that guy. And that's why I say, man, I'm telling you, it's going to be hard to replace him. We got Sonic back there. Jahmyr Gibbs, we got Sonic back there. But without Knuckles, I just don't know how that's going to look, man. So we're in the unknown world, and our first test really will be this Sunday against Chicago. I mean, Chicago's pretty good up front defensively, so we're going to see how our offensive line, which has struggled over the last week or two, couple of weeks, we struggled up front. We're going to see how we match up against that D-line in Chicago.
Lomo, so the backups for McNeil and Montgomery, are they capable of absorbing another 20 reps?
So I like Craig Reynolds. I like Reynolds behind him. I think he's pretty good. I think he could provide a little bit of what David Montgomery gave us between the tackles. I think but again, it's not going to be David Montgomery. They're talking about they probably going to have to bring somebody in, so, and then you got Sione Vake, who's a rookie. So you know what I'm saying? And he hadn't played a lot or touched the ball a lot. So now do you want to, when the games get tougher, Tom, as you know, and this time of the year, you got to be executing at a certain level. Do you really trust the rookie back there, carrying the ball 7, 8, 9 times a game? So it's a fine balance that we're going to have to find with this running game. And teams know that. Now that teams know that, how does that change our approach?
Well, the Bears and Lions, they've had some tussles. So the Bears, they play the Lions tough.
Yes, they do.
The outcomes may have not always been what we expected here in Chicago or the finish, but how do you what's your level of respect given that this team is dealing with a pretty hefty losing streak and an unknown future? How do you respect how they're playing and how they're coming out there?
So this would be my question I throw back at you two guys, because before he got the job, Lomas Brown, I heard some of his press conferences, and I was like, man, this dude here. And then he got the job. My question to you guys is, how has the team responded to him? Because he even said himself, he could be a little rough around the edges because he's going to tell the guys, what they need to hear. And it may not always come out roses, what he says. So how has the team responded to him? Have you guys seen a remarked uptick in the team?
Well, I would say against San Francisco, I was a little disappointed in what happened out there, but that was the great unknown with Lomas Brown being in control the first week. But I think they responded better the other night in Minnesota. The defensive line played better. They had a more physical approach on defense. And, you got a guy like Caleb Williams, Lomas. The guy is going to be something special from the beginning and throughout his career. So he always gives you that opportunity to stay involved in the game.
Yeah, and I would say, all you got to do is look at how they performed. They're not starting quickly, obviously. They haven't done it but once all season long. Have they scored in the first quarter or just gone up, I should say. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. The only time they've had a lead in the first quarter was Minnesota, the first game, 7-0. So it's been a challenge, but there's no quit. They keep grinding. So that you got to, and that was the case before too, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I do like, he's very open about, hey, I'm a direct guy.
Yes.
And it's that whole thing of players, you tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Right? I think that's the delineation. But I do like his, and he's very open about how he looks at things and how, some of his own decisions, and everybody's looking to be pretty accountable here. So I do like his attitude. I've had a chance now to sit down with him one-on-one several times, and he's delightful. I love his raw approach to the game for sure. All right, before we let you go, got to ask you this question. Two questions, actually. This will only be the second outdoor game of the year for the Lions. Does that worry you at all come playoff time in the NFC when you're talking, if you don't get that home field advantage, or is it not a factor?
I don't think it's a factor. They proved to me when we went to Green Bay in that game where it was raining and it was kind of cold there, they proved to me that the elements doesn't bother them, that they really take into what Dan Campbell said. We'll play you in the parking lot. We'll play you on dirt. It just doesn't matter. We'll play you anywhere. And they've taken it to heart, and especially Jared Goff, because a lot of the questions have been about him. How would he handle it? And Jared has handled it like a champ. So the rest of the team, I don't think they'll have a problem with following suit. So no, I don't see any reason to have concern about the outdoor weather.
Lastly, Tom, there's 3 pictures behind Lomas in his office of him blocking. Yeah. That middle one, it looks to be a bear.
That's the great Wilbur Marshall. My ex-teammate at the University of Florida, one of my good friends, and you're right about that. And I just happen to have those up there, man. But man, I hadn't talked to Wilbur in so long, man. I don't know if you guys have talked to him, but man, just a great dear friend of mine, and just love the guy to death, man. Will Kitty, we used to call him back in college.
One of the most naturally physically gifted guys I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, Tom, without a doubt, man. Right. I used to have to block that guy, of course, in practice at Florida. And then when I got to the league, and you're right, I'm telling you, just a quick. He was the only guy after we played USC, and he won College Defensive Player of the Year that war. John Robinson, after the game, came in our locker room, stood in front of our whole team, and told Wilbur in front of the whole team that was the greatest defensive performance I've ever seen on a collegiate level. And it was just unbelievable to see John Robinson walk in our locker room after defeat and tell Wilbur that, man. So you're right, Tom, one of the greatest players I've ever played with.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah.
That you don't hear every day.
Yeah.
that's for sure.
When you think of guys like Chip Banks or Ronnie Lott or some of the other greats of the greats that John Robinson got to be around and come into an opponent's locker room and just congratulate him for an effort like that, something that probably stick with you the rest of your life.
Absolutely. One of the greats.
As you are, and I know the disappointment. I'm sure Hall of Fame. You made deep in there, so it's coming. I mean, how are you accepting and handling it?
So another Bear story. I just told you guys I was with Jimbo Covert probably about 2 months ago, about 2 months ago. And, man, the words that man gave me, man, the encouraging words he said to me, after how long it took him to get in there, what he had to go through, man, he made me feel so good just talking to Jimbo, man. So one of the great guys to ever play the game. And, look, it's no shame when you see guys that you played against that were right in your division go to the Hall of Fame that played the same position you played. That just lets me know the competition I went up against. Think about it. You got Jimbo Covert. You got Gary Zimmerman. Guys that played around our era, they're in the Hall of Fame, and we got other guys competing in that same area to get into the Hall of Fame. So Richmond Webb, he just got to be one of the finalists. He's been waiting a long time. So it ain't no shame, because it was so many great offensive linemen, especially tackles, back in my era when I played. So, man, kudos. But Jimbo, man, that's my guy, man. Much love for the big fella. Much love.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And the day will come. The day will come, Lomas.
Yeah.
The day is going to come. I know those are trite words when you have your heart set on it, but
I appreciate it.
It's going to happen. Hey, thank you so much, man. We appreciate you, and we'll see you on Sunday.
Absolutely. Looking forward to seeing you guys.
Hey, Lomas, come in for some hot coffee, because we'll have it in our booth.
I will, because I'm going to be dressed warm, Tom.
Good.
Take care. All right.
Thanks, Lomas.
You too.
See you guys.
Discuss that David Montgomery aspect of things, Tom. I like when he walks down memory lane with you, fellow offensive lineman, and the disappointment he must feel, but the encouragement from Jimbo about the Hall of Fame. I thought that was a cool story.
You know what's weird about Lomas? One quick story is saying hi and goodbye to him after the Detroit.
It's a long time.
I know, but we always had the upper hand on those guys back then, and so you kind of always felt for Lomas, because he is such a good quality guy, and he's such a good football player, and he was the type of guy at that time, along with your Calvin Johnson, your Barry Sanders, and the good players that they've had through Ndamukong Suh throughout the Detroit career, that they never really got surrounded by great players, so they didn't have the success that we are having. And now I feel really fortunate to get the chance to talk to him on this end of it. And they all understand what David Montgomery missing time means to this offense. And he was saying that David Montgomery is not giving up, that he's going to multiple visits to doctors to see if he can maybe get back on the field. And I don't want David Montgomery to do something that's not beneficial for the long term of his career, but I've always known David as a guy, especially when he was with the Bears, how much he was determined to get back on the field after any type of injury setback.
So the crazy thing about this division, and I'm with you 100% on David for sure, and I think they'll have there's a different attitude the way he runs the football. That when he started that game, it was David Montgomery pounding away, and he sets the tone.
Listen, Jamar Gibbs is super fortunate since he's come into the NFL that he's had that guy in front of him that he could reach out to and he could try to catch up to and he could be influenced by. Now, when you're the main key of a position and you got to do all those things that David Montgomery has already put on display, that is challenging and it is a test. And when you get up at 6 o'clock Sunday morning and you walk over to Soldier Field and it's 20-something degrees with possible gust up to 26 miles an hour, it's a whole different feeling, man, when you walk out in that field.
It's not a podcast without Tom Thayer's weather report. It really isn't.
Well,
I don't even look anymore because I know I'm not gonna hear from you.
Wet wind up to 3 to 11 miles an hour with gusts up to 26. So
you've been pretty much right on the money all year long. The Lions have not lost a road game.
I know.
Mm-hmm. They have not lost a road game.
Do you have the schedule in front of you?
And
can you say their road games?
So the Detroit Lions have played at Dallas, and at Minnesota to start the year. They won 47-9 and 31-29. At Green Bay, 24-14, November 3rd.
Right.
Okay. They played at Houston, won by a field goal.
Indoor.
One at Indy, 24-6.
Indoor.
And here we are at Chicago, at San Francisco next week, and then they wrap against Minnesota. They're 4-0 in division, unbeaten on the road. Two things that help you get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree. And, that was when I asked Lomas Brown, does this team know how to win? Because winning throughout the course of the season and winning when it counts at the end of the season and into the playoffs, that's really judgment day in terms of does this team know how to win? And so I think they still have a lot on the line, but I do think the conditions on Sunday will be some of the most difficult that they'll play in up until this point, even though we talked about the rainy conditions in Green Bay.
Have a new or gently used coat laying around? Head to your local Jewel Osco until February 10th and donate one of your new or gently used coats to the 36th Annual Chicago Bears Coat Drive and help keep Chicagoans warm this winter. And good news, Chicago, United Airlines is getting brand new planes with all the bells and whistles like Bluetooth connectivity, screens at every seat, and room for everyone's roller bag. United, proud to fly the Chicago Bears, and you too. All right, the day's news on Thursday. Heard from the coordinators, as we always do. Let's start with the offensive coordinator, Chris Beatty, looking at things from his perspective. First game against Detroit, felt that they made great adjustments at halftime, but again, still pounding that rock on starting faster, Tom. And he said it, no hole digging, be aggressive, come up with the right way to attack the defensive personnel and adjust to that along the way. And I feel it will make a completely different look to the game and a different feel for this team if the Bears can grab the momentum early and ride that wave. You want to grab that crowd in light of the circumstances as soon as possible on Sunday.
I agree 100%. And, I'm not giving advice, but my only thought about after watching the tape, if you were going to go for it on fourth down, you'd have to explore every option that you have given to you at that point, and a difficult fourth down to try to make up that first play, that first fourth down they went for, because I do think both fourth downs and that third down that was a fumble caused and they gained possession of them, I do think those three plays alone factored in what could have been a different outcome in the game on last Monday night.
All right, a walkthrough on the first 2 days of the week's practice, Tom. No go for Tevin Jenkins, calf. Still no Javon Dexter, Ryan Bates on a rest day for Mercedes Lewis. On the upside, an upgrade to a full participation after missing a game with a concussion for Braxton Jones and Roshan Johnson, who's missed. He got hurt in the Detroit game and had not been back since, but I saw him in shoulder pads yesterday at Hallis Hall, and then Darrell Taylor also a full return. So those are some things, Roshan, he's got 6 rushing touchdowns. He's been the hammer to DeAndre Swift, the 1-2 punch in the backfield, and he and Keenan now with the team high 6 touchdowns. Obviously Keenan's through the air, and a Braxton return looks promising.
Yeah. One thing about Roshan, if I'm throwing a pass and I need max protection, he's the back that I want in there. I think he's technically the soundest of all the backs in terms of that kind of fundamentals. Braxton, I'm glad he's there, give competitiveness to the position. And I'm not saying here that I would put him right back in the lineup. There's a chance that I may play Amagaji again and see what he can offer me at home. See if he can what he can offer me in more favorable conditions at home. And then, Tevin Jenkins, I would hope to think that maybe he'd be ready to play by Sunday. And I'm glad to see Darrell Taylor back, because I think that Eric Washington did a really nice job of defensive lineman rotation, not only who was playing, but where they are playing. And I think they got significant pressure onto Darnold. And I think with less escapability by Goff, I do think that Eric can do the same with the largest group of guys.
Heck, it's even possible, I'd imagine, then, if Tevin's a no-go, Karan could play left guard.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Bears fans, Steinhoffel's a proud partner of the Chicago Bears. This Bears season, Steinhoffel's is partnering with Special Spaces Illinois to create dream bedrooms for children battling cancer. For every false start caused by the Bears defense during a home game, Steinhoffel's donates $1,000 to Special Spaces Illinois. Shop in store and online at steinhoffels.com. All right, let's go to Eric Washington. He was very firm at the podium, all serious. Nothing more, just very, very serious on this day. Felt that they impacted the quarterback, obviously, as you mentioned, against of Sam Darnold. Thought it was a spirited performance and full effort. But the 21 points, he says, was related to penalties in his mind. That's got to stop. So the penalties complimented Daniel Harding on the pressure on the Stevenson interception. And it's critical in his mind. They got to defend the run better than they did at Detroit in that first game.
Well, I think they have to defend a run inside the tackles better than they did in the Detroit game. I think when Detroit tried to run outside the tackles, the lateral pursuit of the Bears defense did a nice job. But I think the immediacy of point of attack inside the shoulders of each offensive tackle was hit quickly enough where guys were either still fighting off blocks or guys weren't in position to make the plays. And so that is the biggest challenge to the defense, is that interior style of defense be more battle winning immediately to stop that interior run.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Illinois, right here at home, driving access toward healthier communities through it all. Special teams, there have been some highlights over the course of the season. They had some penalty issues early on in the season. That's ironed out for the most part, but you get a guy like Dominique Robinson. We discussed this in our Monday podcast, but Hightower really gave him a lot of compliments on that block punt. Rarely up. Max effort on that play, and others cooperate. Amin Agbagbamiga as well.
Jeff, so when you're repetitively taught on punt block, and it's an all-out block, your aiming point at all blockers is the foot of the punter, and take the ball off the foot of the punter without contact. That was blocked by his face mask with elbow contact to the chest to the punter. And so Dominique had won his rush so quickly that he was beyond the foot and the leg of the punter long before the ball was ever being dropped to the punter's foot. And so from the technical standpoint of a perfectly designed block, Dominique took exactly what was offered to him, and he made the most out of it. And I congratulate him on that effort and that reward.
I know it's touchy because you got numbers. It's a numbers game. But can one play like that on special teams, as physical and violent as he attacked it, earn him an active spot to play more on special teams and get into that rotation up front defensively here in the final weeks?
I think he's got the athleticism that you wouldn't not give him a chance on any one of the special teams. Is he a willing and a capable blocking on kickoff return? Yes. Is he a willing and capable rusher on kickoff coverage? Yes. Can he block on punt coverage? Yes. Can he rush on punt block? Yes. So everything that you need out of him, including extra point and field goal rush, there's a place for him. And that's the thing about Dominique Robinson throughout his career. If he's not a regular in the pass rush and the pass defensive line rotation, he's going to have to be able to keep his stripes earned on special teams, a lot like Israel Adonijah throughout his career, and then ultimately what became of him in the aftermath as he became every down player. So to me, I just like Dominique Robinson's determination to be good and to be better every day.
All right, we're brought to you by PNC, official bank of the Bears. Appreciate PNC Bank as always, and that'll wrap us up for this week. We'll talk to you on the radio, a good old-fashioned noon start at Soldier Field, 10 a.m. the pregame on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network. Special thanks to Lomas Brown, the Detroit Lions legend and the radio analyst for the Lions, and to 85 Chicago Bear Tom Thayer. I'm Jeff Joniak. Thanks for listening, everybody. Please subscribe now to the Chicago Bears official app, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Bear down, everybody.